Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for vocabulary and facilitation tools. My name is Corinne Connor, and we are going to go ahead and get started. Okay, here is a screen that shows our team that we have worked together to create these webinars. Some of you have probably been on quite a few of them. If not, and this is your first one, welcome. This is our team, our educational technology service team, our special ed team, and the educational services team. This is my information here, Corinne Connor, and Des Arnold is my my other half of the literacy team, but we do have quite a few people that have just joined our team as well that have some early literacy expertise as well. Dr. Jess Miller and Dr. Becky Blouse also are both literacy, and Dr. Blouse does some math as well. Okay, our Zoom webinar meeting norms. Your chat, your microphone, and your camera was disabled due to the large sizes of the group. You can put things into the chat. It is being monitored by Des currently, so if you have any questions, you can either put it into the Q&A section, you can raise your hand if you want to be unmuted and you have a question. But we do have the microphone and camera off currently. Okay, responses are visible to everyone, so if you are looking to just send one of us an email or an information privately, please look to email us for more specific information, or you can attend our office hours. I'm having office hours at 11 o'clock today. I will open my Zoom room at 10:45, and Des will be putting my Zoom room meeting code into the chat later in the webinar. Okay, again, I said this already. Please raise your hand if you'd like us to unmute you so you can say something, or if you have a question for the group. Please do not forget, excuse me, to fill out your Act 48 credit link. It will be shared at the end of the presentation in the chat, and you need to just click on the link and complete it if you need Act 48 hours. Okay, this is a slide of some resources. Again, you'll be redirected at the end of each webinar to a form that needs to be completed. You need to have your PPID number in order to receive your Act 48 credit. This is for PA educators only. If you are not a PA educator and you are on the webinar, welcome, first of all, but know that some of this information will not pertain to you. All of our webinars are archived, so if there is something that you want to come back to that you heard us say, the Zooms are being recorded and put into an archive, and that is available on our LearnOn site. Also, the actual slide decks are available to you. Des will also put that into the chat later in the webinar as well. Okay, there's the link for the recordings, and the LIU LearnOn site is our main resource site for all of this information. There is tons of stuff out there. Again, if this is your first webinar that you have been able to come on, welcome, but please go to the LearnOn site and check out any of the resources that we have. There's tons of information on there for you to use. Okay, there is the link. Okay, some expectations for online learning as we proceed through this different way of teaching. Remember that your district has a continuity of education plan. Depending on what that is how you are going to proceed with the work that you assign for your students to complete. If you are reviewing and enriching, then you are not looking to assess them for new knowledge. If you are in a district where your continuity of education plan is for planned instruction, then you are expecting your students to gain new knowledge. Okay, as always, please be aware that FAPE applies to all online instruction. So we always have to think about our special ed population and our population with services. We need to make sure that we are providing free and appropriate public education. We need to make sure that we are providing access, equitable access for all students. Okay, so anytime you are creating content, please just make sure that you create the content with the idea that you want to make sure that students with disabilities do have the same opportunity as anybody else in your general ed population. And this isn't new information. I'm sure that you do this every day in your regular lessons. Okay, down at the bottom, there's a bit.ly for the LIU LearnOn best practices. Here's just some important information as we, again, change the expectation for online learning. Please remember that less is more. We want to prioritize. If your district is doing planned instruction, please figure out what is most important for your students to know and balance that into some sort of manageable chunk of knowledge that you can push out to your students. It's very, very important that you are thinking about the socio-emotional part of this as well. We don't want to bombard our students or our parents with lots of information. It is a traumatic time for everyone, so just again, think of that. Video is important, again, because of that socio-emotional piece. We want to make sure that we are showing ourselves just so your kids can see your face, even if you are just simply saying, hey guys, if you're in a district that you cannot access Zoom, but maybe you can access Flipgrid and you can just take a video of yourself, encourage them to also video themselves just to check and see how everybody's doing. Very important to limit your length of your video, no more than 6 minutes. I've actually read a lot about this, maybe even keeping it to 4 to 5 minutes is best for students to actually be able to log on and pay attention to that information. Be clear in your objectives and your expectations. Identify a timeline to complete the task. So if you're going to load all of your information like in a front load on Monday, and you expect your students to have all of that done by the end of the week, please be clear just to tell them this is all of your expectation for the week. Complete it at on your timeline, but just ensure that it's done by a certain date. It's very important to organize and sequence instructions, just like we would in a face-to-face classroom. it's important to think about how you are putting those instructions together for students and what you're expecting them to follow. Okay, we have a few outcomes today, 2 of them. We're gonna discuss some important elements of vocab instruction, and then I have some resources linked in here for teachers, students, and parents. So if you are a teacher and a parent, you can use some of these things. If you are a teacher that just likes to have lots of resources pushed out to your parents, please feel free to use any of these or any of the other ones that are linked into the presentation that Nicole did last week on ELA resources. So there are 5 key principles for effective vocab instruction. Okay, the first one is that we want to make sure we are focusing on rich meaning. We are not talking about strict dictionary definitions. We want to emphasize connections among words. We want to promote the usage of words. Review is extremely important, especially at this time. We don't want students to forget what they might have learned throughout the year in our face-to-face classes. And we want to involve students in word study. So I'm going to break down each of these just a little bit for you. As far as rich meanings, okay, we want to have the kids engage in providing several different versions of a word's definition. So if you're asking them to find the dictionary definition, that's okay for one version, but then we want to think about some of these other things. Finding synonyms for the word, finding antonyms for the word, if there are any. What is the part of speech? What semantic group does it belong to? Thinking of having them create comparisons, real life examples, graphic versions. This is extremely important for our EL population, especially if these are tier 1 or tier 2 words. Anybody that might be familiar with the work of Isabel Beck, she talks about words being classified into tiers. Tier 1 being general words that everybody should know. Tier 2 being words that are a little more specific to just school language. And tier 3 being content specific words. So you might have EL students who are new to English, and having that graphic version is very important for tier 1 words. And acting it out. This is just a fun way to have students work on vocabulary. Again, if you think about something like Flipgrid, where you're having students act out some sort of new vocabulary word, or if you're doing review words, it might be just a fun thing for them to do. And the research shows that by the time you've come up with all of these different explanations of a word, students are more likely to remember it, and we can do more with just these 9 if you want to get into analogies, part to whole relationships, etc. You can do way more to enhance the learning of these vocabulary words. Okay, there's a link to the source of this information at the bottom. Okay, as far as the connections among words, okay, brain research shows that your visual word form area, or where you hold your lexicon, your dictionary, actually organizes words into networks. Anybody that was at our Science of Reading PD this year or that has done any work with letters, this is something that is talked about a lot in there. So we want to make sure that we're linking new words to concepts and that you're classifying words into categories and revisiting them as a set. So if you think about this, like let's say you're talking about diesel trucks and you think about words like wheel, tire, dump truck, gasoline, highway, those would be a set of words that would go together if you're talking about something that you're reading. There are circumstances where it's necessary to simultaneously introduce collections of closely related words, like when kids are learning about the structure of cells or atoms. But we want to make sure that if we're introducing collections of closely related words, we are accompanying that with a deeper dive into some of the underlying concepts of those words. It's important to think about words as a way to get students to think about a concept that they have already mastered. Linking new words to concepts is great to link a whole collection of words. And there was a suggestion that I had read on one of the sources where teachers actually classify vocabulary each week into a folder, and then once the folder has accumulated related words, they revisit the word bank as a set with their students. So promoting usage of words. This is kind of pretty simple. Instruction should create opportunities for students to use words in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Beck and McCune came up with the idea of word wizards. Word wizards is a way to give kids extra points in a vocabulary lesson if they can bring evidence that they have used their vocabulary words in their everyday life, or if they have seen them on a television show or while playing a computer game. If they can bring that evidence to their actual instruction, it will make them definitely, it will make them definitely remember the words better. Okay, the next part was review. You have to use it so you don't lose it. Very important to remember that. It can be hard to retain vocabulary if you aren't getting the opportunity to use it. Kids may not see some of these words for a long time, so we want to make sure that we're encouraging the use. Okay, working with previously learned words specifically as a review day. So when you're doing your online education, maybe thinking about creating a review day for some of their vocabulary. And important to also use morphology to encourage the use of old words to make new words. So thinking about using a word that you had previously had students learn and add prefixes or suffixes or altering the parts of speech. That can be really powerful for students to remember the word as well. Okay, word study. Word study is important. Possum, if you have ever heard, again, if you've ever done letters, possum is a way to remember some of the layers of language, such as the phonology, the orthography, the semantics, the morphology. There's more to that, but I'm gonna keep going because I don't wanna run over time here. It's important to develop word consciousness among students, having them identify unknown words from reading. and important for readers to notice if they have a lack of knowledge for particular words. They need to learn how to resolve the gaps in their reading, and encourage reading for topics that they enjoy, especially at this time in our situation. We want to encourage reading not just for curriculum, but just for enjoyment. Okay, a little bit about content learning. Vocabulary is a core of literacy. It should not be taught just in isolation. Contextualized situations for students. Only 1.4% of time in a content area was actually, sorry, our Alexa just went off and started playing. Sorry about that. 1.4% of time in content area learning is used for specific vocabulary development. Teachers should attend to the significant components of word learning: wide reading, selecting words, modeling, word solving, and providing students opportunities through collaborative conversations. So if you're a district that allows Zoom when you're doing your ELA classes, if you're thinking about having students work collaboratively on growing vocabulary. Using multimedia, really important right now because that's what we're doing. Building background knowledge, getting visualization of what the words mean, using the internet to broaden the understanding. Again, I keep hitting on making videos, Zoom, working together as groups, and forming global connections for students with words. Okay, here's a set of resources that we had pulled for not just vocabulary, but literacy in general. There are a link to parent resources, teacher resources, and then the very bottom one is actually a link of different vocabulary apps that you can load on iPads or phones just to get kids working on vocabulary. Some of them are paid, but some of them are free currently in this COVID crisis. There is a link to WordGen for elementary and WordGen for middle school. Okay, here is our LearnOn site. Again, this is the link that you want to click on to get to this actual site. It is broken into educators, admin, parents, and caregivers. Okay, and all of the upcoming webinars are listed here. Oops, sorry. There is the link over here for recordings. Okay, and also the link for Act 48. Okay, if you would kindly fill out the LearnOn web eval, that link will be directly into the chat. And again, this is the bit.ly for the Act 48 hours that will also be placed in the chat. They are case sensitive, so please make sure that you pay attention to what is capitalized and what is not if you are not clicking directly on the link. Okay, so that is everything that we wanted to discuss for vocabulary. If there are any specific questions that anybody wants to ask, please feel free to place it into the chat, or you can, again, come to office hours. I will open up the Zoom room at 10:45, my personal Zoom, and people can ask any questions that you might need answered. Thanks again for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful Monday. It's beautiful outside, so go out and get some vitamin D. Thank you guys very much, and I hope to talk to you later.